Hi, welcome to Talking With. I'm your host, Yale Cohn. The issue of red light cameras is something that's been part of the national discussion and now part of our local discussion, as just over a year ago, the city of Iowa City has agreed to finally let red light cameras become part of our law enforcement here in town. However, over the last years, members of a group by the name of StopBigBrother.org have filed a number of petitions, including getting the help of the ACLU to try and put a stop to this. Joining us from that group this evening are Martha Hampel and Caroline Dieterle, who is a stranger to no one who's ever paid attention to anything in politics in Iowa City. There's very few things, if any, that she doesn't have an opinion on, and she always makes sure to very eloquently share them, whether you agree or not, by going to city council meetings and writing letters to the editor. It's a great pleasure to have you both on the show this evening. Let me ask you, this issue's been being discussed for a number of years now, but your group's been in the news a lot just in the last few days because you're engaged in a petition drive. Tell me, what do you need the petitions for, how many do you need, and why do you need them now?
Okay, I think the reason it's been in the news so much lately is our deadline is coming up. We have an April 1st deadline to turn in 2,500 signatures for our initiative petition. And with that, the city of Iowa City would decide whether to adopt our ordinance or put it to a vote in November on the city election, or for the city election. And
this initiative of yours is part of, I think, something, the home charter rule?
Our initiative would actually add an ordinance to the city code to restrict camera surveillance or traffic surveillance. It would ban red light cameras, speed cameras, license plate recognition systems, and drones for the purpose of traffic law enforcement.
So you need 2,500 signatures for them to consider this, or with 2,500 signatures, this is default passed? How does that work?
If we get the 2,500 signatures, the city of Iowa City would then have to look at our initiative and decide whether they would adopt it as an ordinance outright. And if they decide not to, we would be able to put it to a vote.
Put a vote among the council members?
Among the city.
And it would be an initiative that the city could weigh in on this?
Yes. And so if we get the 2,500 valid signatures and it's accepted as a valid initiative, that's where it would go from there.
How has the process of getting these signatures been going for you guys so far?
Well, we've been doing it in the worst weather of the year. You know, prior times when I've collected signatures on petitions, it has been spring, summer, or fall. And this is winter, and it is very difficult, you know, to do this in the winter. You're worried about gloves and, you know, freezing yourself, you know, while you're doing it, if you're doing it on the street. And because most businesses don't like to have something controversial going on their premises, they don't want you to set up inside.
Is this an issue that you think, or you've heard from people, is necessarily controversial?
Well, it's one of these things where I don't think people really have paid attention enough and really realize what's going on. As soon as we find out about, or as soon as we talk to somebody and make them aware, 9 times out of 10 they're wanting to sign the petition because they are aghast at the idea that in Iowa City, of all places, you know, Big Brother could be watching them on all of these electronic devices.
Well, that's, I mean, I think the umbrella of your group covers red light cameras, speed cameras, and drones, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But just the issue of the red light cameras, for the folks, as you said, haven't really been paying attention, tell them, how would they work, what would happen, and then what's the rationale behind the city's interest in putting red light cameras in Iowa City?
The red light cameras basically would take a picture, an image of someone running a red light. If they enter the intersection at the red light, their image would be taken. The city would then receive that image from the vendor, the camera manufacturer. A police officer would determine whether or not that person deserves a ticket, and they would be issued a citation which is mailed to them 2 or 3 weeks later. And we ultimately feel like the city is looking for revenue, that this is supposed to be a revenue generator rather than about safety.
The city's agreed to do this. It's my understanding they haven't yet signed any contracts with these independent vendors. Do we know what these potential fines would be? These, in their civil liabilities, it's my understanding they wouldn't count against, like, points against your license. Do we know what they are here? What are they in other places that employ red light cameras? Generally?
We aren't sure. The city hasn't decided on a contract with a vendor. We've seen from Cedar Rapids a red light camera or a speed camera ticket is somewhere around $65, $75. And of course, a percentage of that, the cost of the ticket, will go to the camera manufacturer.
What are they now? If I was, for instance, driving down Burlington Street and the light started to turn and I just kept going across, say, Gilbert, and there was a Iowa City cop there, what would that fine be to me if I was issued a ticket?
I'm not sure. I've never gotten a ticket for running a red light, so I'm not sure what that cost would be, actually.
When, you mentioned that you think it's about, or your group rather thinks it's revenue based. When the city first started discussing this a few years ago, they put out a list of the top crash locations in Iowa City over a 3-year period, which was 2008 through 2010, and there's a link which I'll share on our show's Facebook page. But none of these intersections, even the one with the most crashes, which was the corner of Melrose and Mormon-Trek, had 41 crashes, collisions in a 3-year span, which is just over 12 a year. So does that mean 1 a month? It could. It could mean there was 1 month with 5 and 5 months with none. I don't know. But this data set, and we were talking a little bit before the show, I think is incomplete because it doesn't say what time of day those happened, what were the weather conditions. Like just with the first one, Melrose and Mormon-Trek, was that maybe after there was a game at Kinnick and there was a wild amount of traffic, maybe with some people that had been, tippling a little bit. So that, to me, not only doesn't it seem like enough to warrant this, but if that's what they're going on, or one of the rationales are going on, I'm going to need to be convinced better than just a number.
Absolutely, those are really good questions, and actually the data we have is from 2001 to 2011. It was 10 years at 10 intersections, or over 10 years at 10 intersections, and there was 165 crashes. And like you said, we don't know what months they happened, and I mean, you could spread it out and say there was less than two accidents per intersection per year, which to me doesn't really sound like it warrants red light cameras. So those are really good questions. That's information we don't have, but it would be...
Let's say we did agree, and we don't because your group is opposed to this, but I want to ask Caroline, you brought up the issue of Big Brother and being filmed. Let's say that this was shown and we can talk about, and it's my understanding you believe that these don't make people safer. What is the objection of your group simply to the act of being filmed, ostensibly, by these cameras or by speed cameras or by drones? Where is that feeding into your group's opposition to this?
Well, it bothers me, and I guess other people in the ACLU, because these things often tend to be the thin end of the wedge. So they begin with red light cameras and ultimately then run through the speeding cameras and the traffic, or the license plate recognition, and the drones ultimately. And if you've been reading anything lately about drones, it's really quite disquieting. They're unsafe because of the conditions that they cause for other aircraft. And the idea that an anonymous or very distanced operator operating one of them can decide what is going to be filmed and can decide what kinds of actions to be taken with these things. So to me, and I think to others in the ACLU, this is a potential violation of the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. Someone put it rather eloquently by saying that a society that lives under surveillance of this type is a society in which the people are constantly frightened. And that isn't the kind of society that we envision in the United States or in Iowa City.
Well, I looked into this when I was doing a little prep for today's show, and purportedly, in the United States anyway, the average citizen is filmed 200 times a day, whether you're in places where you work, for instance, if you worked at the university, you know, going into banks, into gas stations, those kind of things. Those are private institutions generally, but how would you answer people who would say, well, what's the big deal if you're filmed by a camera here, a camera there? You're already on film 200 times a day. Well, how do you differentiate between the two?
Well, for one thing, I think that if a business does it, they recirculate the film so that nothing is permanent. It isn't stored data. Because this kind of thing here, and the thing that we're worried about in the ACLU, is storing this data. And having it, you know, kept forever, in whose care and with what discretion, one doesn't know. And the other thing is that it's if you're being filmed, for example, in a drugstore, or you're being filmed in a convenience store, that's more for the safety of the personnel that are serving you. This isn't to levy a ticket against you,
well,
or to punish you in some way.
A couple of years ago, there was concerns that there was a lot of kind of fights and chaos on the Ped Mall, for instance, here in downtown Iowa City. And it's my understanding a group of private businesses put the money together to install cameras there on the Ped Mall. And I certainly could be wrong, but the only instance I've seen of those cameras, and I believe they've been up for nearly 2 years now, having been used, was when some drunk young lady tore up a plant or a small tree out of a planter in front of the Sheraton, and they had a picture. Iowa City Police are looking for this, you know, this botanist vandal, but nobody's shown pictures of, hey, we're looking for this guy who sexually assaulted someone, we're looking for this person who stabbed someone. I haven't seen those being an effective deterrent to crime. If you walk down the Ped Mall now, maybe not this week when the students are away for spring break, but it's still pretty chaotic down there. It might help to look for people who've done wrong after the fact, but have these cameras, whether they're red light cameras or speed cameras, been shown to be an effective deterrent to people running red lights or to speeding?
In some cases, it only affects driving of the residents of the city. And the problem is Iowa City has nearly 1 million visitors per year to the University of Iowa, to the VA hospital, our stadium. We have so many visitors that wouldn't really know that they were there, and it would be effective if you're going through the intersection every day and you know it's there, but that's one reason why we don't feel like it would be effective here. Well,
and you don't know that you've supposedly violated anything until, you know, days or weeks later, whereas if you're stopped by a patrolman, he can say, listen, do you know that you were 5 miles over the limit or 20 miles over the limit, or that you just failed, you know, to stop at that stop sign? You don't have anybody basically pointing out, you know, what kind of thing you've done wrong, or pointing out that this curve is much too sharp for you to be going at this rate of speed, and you know, nothing like that to sort of tell people, you know, what you're doing wrong, and please don't do this anymore, and I'm afraid we're going to have to give you a ticket. One
thing I've heard from proponents of these kind of things in other cities is they say, well, as you mentioned, if you have a patrolman to pull you over and that kind of stuff, they say, well, when we have these, it frees up. Our officers don't have to concern themselves with these petty things. Have, in fact, there been any studies from a given department or a slew of departments that says, hey, since we got the cameras in, crimes have gone down because we've got cops that are freer now to do that kind of stuff?
I've never heard of any
correlation like that?
I haven't heard of any.
I haven't read anything like that, and there would have to be officers available to review the images sent to them by the vendors. So I don't know that it really would free up that many officers.
Well, and right here in Iowa City, you know, they said after they passed the 21 ordinance that this would mean that they wouldn't have to have such an intense police presence downtown.
No, then the cops just went to all the neighborhoods where the parties were now.
Right. But what happened was that the university police moved in and took the places of the people who were there. So somebody was still on.
Yeah, and I also think that's slightly disingenuous when the city has said, well, look at our stats, our arrest rates are lower, this is lower, that's lower. Yeah, from your department. You're not including the data from the University of Iowa the University of Iowa Police, which has expanded their roles and their size. What people who are in favor of these kind of things for the safety element, how we've seen it happen in locally in Cedar Rapids. At least they have speed cameras there on the interstate. I don't know if those are under the aegis of the Cedar Rapids Police Department or the state of Iowa. Have they shown, because they've been for a couple of years now, have they shown we've had fewer accidents, we've had fewer fatal accidents, those kind of things? Has there been anything that they point to say, besides the revenue issue, to say, hey, look, there is in fact bona fide public safety benefit to having these cameras?
Cedar Rapids has had a decrease in accidents, but at the same time, what also coincides with that decrease in accidents is the resurfacing of their road, which is an engineering technique that really helped. And actually the Iowa Department of Transportation has guidelines that state they'd like cities to implement all engineering techniques before installing cameras. Red light cameras in particular are less effective than lengthening the yellow light time by even 1 second, has proven to decrease accidents by a greater percentage than cameras. Installing a left-hand turn lane disperses traffic more evenly, so more cars have time to get through and are less likely to run a red light. These types of things.
A short four-way red light would do tons of things and cost nothing.
Yeah, and so that by resurfacing the road, yeah, they did decrease accidents. And also driver feedback signals. When you drive down the road and you can see how fast you're driving, sometimes there's little units that police will park out there that show you're going so many miles over the speed limit and you slow down. So driver feedback is definitely effective, and it's not controversial. It's not punitive. And
I read recently that the city's considering a rather expensive traffic engineering spruce up, fix up for the corner here in downtown, not far from our studio, of Clinton and Burlington. Has the city looked at some of these other high collision intersections and considered traffic engineering solutions to this, or has your group proposed this? As you mentioned, there's certain places where I've seen accidents happen. I thought, well, if that guy wasn't trying to squeeze through to make his left, if there was a left turn signal, those kind of things, are these options that you've put forth as alternatives?
I know that the city has said that they've exhausted these options, but the Iowa Department of Transportation did intervene and wanted more data from particularly the intersections that fall on the highway, on the state roadways, the Highway 6 and Burlington, and wasn't satisfied with the information they got from the city. So I can't say for sure, but perhaps there are other things they could look at before cameras.
This idea is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's been kicking around for a while. It seems like it's picked up some steam of late. Caroline, as I mentioned, you've been actively involved in a lot of issues over a number of years now. Why do you think Iowa City is doing this now? And a lot of people have argued that this seems like the kind of thing that you wouldn't expect to happen in, the People's Republic of Johnson County, the Athens of the Midwest. This seems revenue-based things, if in fact that's what you believe they are. Why do you think this is happening in Iowa City finally?
Well, I think these things tend to be fad-like. They're cropping up elsewhere, and so, the local interest, is likely then to look at what's going on elsewhere. The city manager and the police department, police chief probably, are made aware of these. Who knows? I mean, the vendors might well be putting forward certain amounts of publicity saying, look what they're doing in Cleveland, look what they're doing in Cedar Rapids, why don't you do that here? And put on the pressure that it's the coming thing, it's the way the modern city deals with these things, kind of thing. And they always want to be current and going ahead with the crest of the wave.
And I don't think there's a city in America that doesn't love revenue. If
exactly. I mean, if they could get some money, it's wonderful.
So your group's working hard to stop this. I imagine in the course of your action, there's certainly a fair amount of folks who don't know a lot about this. So that's why I'm very grateful, again, you came on. Hopefully folks at home can learn more about this. But there has to be people in the community who think that you're wasting your time and that there's nothing wrong with red light cameras, nothing wrong with speed cameras. What is their position on this? Like, oh, don't worry about it. What do you got to fear? If you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have to worry about being seen. Who are those people, and what's their perspective on this?
Well, a lot of them, I think, are fairly innocent people who don't really realize that anything could go wrong, and they're the kind of people who say that, well, if I'm being good, nothing's going to happen to me. They put a great deal of trust in the establishment to make sure that everything is on target and above board and all of that. I mean, those are those kinds of people. But my answer to those people really is if we're going to have something that is going to be as pervasive and possibly intrusive and even cost money as this system is to the average citizen, that citizen has a right to vote on it. And that's the reason I'm in this, is because we really need to be able to vote. And the way to get a vote is only to bring a petition that's valid that forces this to happen. Because I am under no illusion, really, that there's a big fat chance that the city council will look at this thing and see that we have 2,500 signatures on it and say, oh, okay, let's pass this ordinance. I don't think they will. Yeah, I don't think they will. I think that they would make it go to a vote, and there's an upcoming city election anyway, so it's not as though we're causing a special election. And you know, it seems to me that the fair thing is to put it on for a vote and let people decide.
And also, to your earlier question, this is, you know, we're addressing all types of traffic surveillance, because it did start out with red light cameras, and we were kind of shocked. Like, in Iowa City, we're going to have red light cameras, and it kind of opened our eyes to the idea that the city is actually considering this type of surveillance, and that's why we came to them with such a broad initiative to ban the red light cameras, speed cameras, license plate recognition systems, and drones, because we feel like when it comes to traffic surveillance, this is sort of an innocent way to introduce surveillance. It's for traffic enforcement, and it's not that big a deal, but there is an element of mission creep, that the information could be used for other purposes.
So you're saying it's kind of like a frog in the pot argument. Like, once you acclimate the public to being filmed at points A, B, and C, they'd be less likely to raise a stink at, you know, D, E, and F.
Absolutely, and when it comes to drones, even they wouldn't necessarily follow roadways and watch for speeders. I mean, they could be traveling as the crow flies over backyards, and maybe you're sunbathing in your backyard, and you don't necessarily want that on a vendor's camera. Has
there been any discussion? I know, you know, domestically, drones are really becoming a part of our experience. They were used, in fact, a few weeks ago when that one police officer from Los Angeles went on a killing spree and was found in the mountains and that kind of stuff. Has there been any talk of the use of drones in the state of Iowa? I haven't heard anything from the city council. You know, I haven't heard Connie Champion talking about how we need drones yet or anything like that. What, you know, you're trying to preemptively stop it here, but is that in response to anything that's on the table, so to speak?
Our initiative isn't necessarily in response to anything happening in the state. It is, we feel like Iowa City does follow national trends, and based on that, we wanted to include drones. However, there is a drone manufacturer called AirCover that moved into Cedar Rapids, and the president of that company has boasted about what their drones could be used for, and that included law enforcement and traffic surveillance, that type of thing. So with a drone manufacturer right next door, it just seemed logical to include drones.
Well, here's how you get drones to be precluded in Iowa City. Just insist that all the drones have to be free trade, fair trade, cruelty-free, you know, run on, you know, made entirely from recyclable parts with, you know, biofuel, or whatever would make it impossible for an actual drone manufacturer. Make it the most eco-conscious green drone. Not even drone. Hire, like we have owls around here. Hire owls, train them, outfit them with cameras. You know, go the other way. Go the Swiftian route. That's make that proposal. Include that in your next thing. Say, you know, instead of creating drones, why don't we give jobs to local, you know, birds? You know, you need the 2,500 signatures. As it's my understanding that in the past, when people have brought signatures for different referendums to the city council, they have said, well, hey, we checked out the list. Mickey Mouse is not actually a resident of Iowa City, those kind of things. If they look at it, how many signatures do you have so far?
I think we broke 2,200 last night.
Okay, so you're getting close, but you'll go there, you say, hey, we have 2,500, read our demands. The city says, hey, there's 150, there's 200, there's any number on here that aren't registered voters. What does it mean to be a registered voter insofar as the purposes of those kind of petitions are, A, and B, what happens if they say your list is now short X number of votes?
Well, in order to sign the initiative, you have to be an Iowa City resident registered to vote, and you're then considered a qualified elector.
Registered in Johnson County, Iowa.
In Iowa City, yeah.
All right.
Rather than an eligible elector, which would be anyone
over the 18 who's not a convicted felon.
Right. And then if the city does come and say that, you know, we're missing, that some of them are invalid, we would get an extra 15 days to make up the difference. And to start, the city would have 15 days to count the signatures.
Caroline, we were talking before the show, you mentioned that the standard for what is in fact someone able to sign these manner petitions is actually stronger here in Iowa City than it is on the state level. What is the difference between those two, and why do you think it is?
Well, this Code of Iowa talks about eligible electors, and that means, as you just noted, somebody who's at least of age and is not a felon, you know, has no other reason for, if there is any such, that they can't walk down to the local place and get registered to be a voter. So according to the state, eligible voters can sign petitions. And you might remember that when people are running for office and they have to circulate petitions, nobody cares whether you are actually registered or not. And now in Iowa, there is the same-day vote and register law, so that people on election day can go down and register and vote all at the same day, all on the same day. So that really makes any eligible elector, you know, it seems to me, in any kind of a practical way, also a qualified elector. But the city code, you know, the city charter restricts people far more. It says they have to be qualified, they must already be registered in order to sign, what the code says is that you turn in the number of required signatures, and that they are to be looked at to see whether, you know, the petition has the requisite number of signatures on its face, and accepted if they do. And it's up to somebody who doesn't want to see the thing go to actually raise objections. It's not up to the city clerk or to the city attorney or the council to make any kind of objection to that.
Well, you have just a few more weeks until your deadline comes up, which I believe you said is
April 1st.
April 1st.
Right.
Folks at home, they want to learn more about your group, what it's about, events you're having, where they can go and sign this petition. Where can they find out that information?
They can go to our website, stopbigbrother.org, and we're also having a public forum on traffic surveillance on the 28th of this month from 7 to 9 p.m. in the chemistry building. It's auditorium W290. We're going to have some high-profile speakers. We'll have Ben Stone from the ACLU of Iowa. We will have Gary Biller, the president of the National Motorist Association, and Republican Iowa Senator Brad Zahn, who actually is the one who introduced the state-level bill. I think it was House File 19, or Senate File 19 to ban traffic surveillance. So we'll have those speakers, and it will also be a public forum. People will be able to ask questions. And
fantastic.
And they can sign the petition.
And they can sign the petition.
Well, listen, let me thank you both very much for coming on and helping inform me and hopefully inform our viewers about this. And whether you agree with this issue or not, if more people in the community were involved as you two are, we'd all be better off. So thanks again for coming in. Thanks for being home for watching, and we'll see you next week.